My name is Bob Johnson. This is a story from nearly 30 years ago. It was a cold night in late November, about a month after I was sent to a factory in a rural town in Nebraska. Though it was just past 6 o'clock, it was already dark outside. Back then, I lived on the second floor of an apartment that the auto repair company I worked for had rented. After finishing work that day, I hurried home, holding the takeout I had bought for dinner. When I turned off the main street and into a narrow lane, my apartment was just ahead. There was a restaurant at the corner, but it was located deep inside a narrow pathway that extended from the main street. The land was shaped like a flagpole. It's called a flag lot. So, the restaurant building itself was diagonally across from my apartment, separated by that lane. The lane was dark with only a few street lights, but the light shining out of the restaurant's large windows was almost blinding. Sorry for the long preamble, but in essence, that evening, as I turned the corner from the main street and passed by a restaurant, I happened to glance over and saw a young woman in her 20s inside the restaurant, puckering her lips and sticking them out toward the window, as if she was beckoning for a kiss from me. I felt like I'd seen something I shouldn't have and hurriedly ascended the external staircase to my apartment. Originally, the reason I had been transferred to a factory in Nebraska was due to a light-hearted prank by a colleague with whom I had worked in a repair shop in New York. I was on the brink of turning 30. Around that time, the car repair shop where I'd worked for nearly 10 years went bankrupt, and I got re-employed as a mechanic at a car repair company with several branches in the Northeast. Of course, the workshop I joined had senior colleagues. But there were also mischievous junior colleagues. "Hey Bob, can you take care of this? Finish up what you're working on first." The task the junior colleague handed over to me was a simple regular inspection of a passenger car. However, the owner of this car, a customer, was quite a character. He was the heir to a transportation company that was a major client of our shop, and he would bring his car in for a regular checkup every 6 months. But if his car wasn't given top priority, he'd get in a foul mood. To make matters worse, he would secretly check to make sure his car wasn't being neglected. Unaware of this, I, following the junior colleague's instruction, first finished repairing another customer's car. Seeing his car's inspection being postponed, the heir, who had been watching from the shadows, lodged a complaint with the factory manager. "Did you guys properly explain it to Bob? We told him it's top priority." The junior colleague chuckled. The factory manager seemed to understand that I hadn't been properly informed. But the heir threatened to get his father involved and end all business with us unless I was fired. "Bob, given the situation, I hate to ask this, but could you go to our Nebraska branch until things cool down?" Not wanting to lose another job, I agreed to go to Nebraska. The factory manager said I'd be there until things cooled down, which meant for a year. In other words, it was a promise to bring me back to New York after a year. However, once I arrived at the rural Nebraska workshop, I quickly took a liking to the relaxed pace, quite different from New York. Throughout the workday, the local AM radio would play. Casually listening to the radio while working. From 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, there was a laid-back program called Hello Nebraska that didn't seem special at all. But I got hooked on it. Every Wednesday, a female reporter on her rounds and the main male announcer would engage in banter that tickled my funny bone. "Hey, Catherine, where are you reporting from today?" "Hi, it's reporter Catherine. Today, I'm at the SC visiting the Arnata Park." "Wait, what? SC, what's that?" "That means the southern part of the county." "Well, then say South County properly." I thought I did. "Geez, you didn't. So, where's this Arnata Park? Sounds nice, I guess." "Yes, I'm definitely at the Arnata Park." "Why do you stretch out the E? It's in a daw." The male radio host would become particularly sharp-tinged, almost bursting with sarcasm. only when he interacted with her. It wasn't that he was genuinely mad. He seemed to be holding back laughter. And Catherine, the budding reporter, would earnestly and seriously respond, which for some reason I found hilarious and became addicted to. Anyway, about the girl from the restaurant across from my apartment. It soon became clear that she wasn't trying to beckon for a kiss from a passing stranger like me. Because, ever since that day, out of curiosity, I'd occasionally lean out from my apartment window to observe her. From my observations, I realized that she seemed to be a restaurant employee, and during slow hours or while waiting for customers, she would make funny faces towards the window, pulling up the corners of her mouth, opening her mouth wide, or puckering her lips. My head was full of questions. Living a boring life in the countryside, my curiosity piqued, and on the next payday, I decided to visit that restaurant I had been avoiding because it seemed a bit pricey. The inside of the restaurant wasn't as formal as I'd expected. It had a modern design and a touch of luxury, but the atmosphere was casual. I ordered a hamburger dinner set. For me, quantity matters more than taste in a regular meal. I was satisfied as long as my stomach was full. Even with that, the hamburger here stood out as exceptionally delicious. And the portion size was pretty generous. But $30 is a bit steep, a treat for myself on payday. I wasn't the only one who thought so. Seems like most folks decide to splurge on payday. The restaurant had a steady stream of customers. Thankfully, she looked so busy that she probably didn't have time to make any funny faces. Speaking of which, I noticed something as soon as I entered the restaurant. There was a large window that extended from the ceiling to about waist height of a standing person, and the lace curtains hanging there were tied back in the middle, leaving it open. At night, with the darkness outside and the reflection of the restaurant's lights on the window, it created a two-way mirror effect. This meant that the girl making funny faces was looking at a reflection in this two-way mirror. Maybe she was practicing for some kind of year-end party performance. That's what I thought at the time. Hey, everyone, can y'all take a moment and listen up? Manager Smith, with his usual laid-back voice, called out to us who were working. So, this coming Wednesday, Manager Smith pointed to a speaker on the wall that was playing a radio broadcast and mentioned that a radio show would be visiting our factory for a segment. You mean, like Hello Nebraska? Ding, ding, ding. Manager Smith mentioned that he would be interviewed, but some of us might be as well, so we should be prepared. Wednesday, which means the reporter would be Catherine, whom I'm a big fan of. And when I saw Catherine's face during the segment, I almost fainted. She was the same waitress making those funny faces. Suddenly, a piercing feedback noise echoed throughout the factory. Right after the Hello Nebraska crew arrived, someone had left the factory radio on, causing feedback. Manager Smith rushed to turn off the radio and profusely apologized to reporter Catherine and the crew. Next up, sir, over here. She turned the microphone to me. Your name? Bob. Roderick. Huh? Have you been working here long? With a pounding heart, I answered her questions. I couldn't remember what she asked or how I responded at the time. That night, I went back to my apartment and replayed the radio segment I had recorded earlier in the day. Well, thank you all, especially Mr. Smurf. That's all from us here. It was not a big deal for me to be called Roderick instead of Bob. But Mr. Smith ended up being called Mr. Smurf. The recording even included some post-interview studio chatter, where a male host said, calling Mr. Smith a Smurf was a bit rude, don't you think? Since then, I'd occasionally peek into the restaurant from a side street or my apartment window. And I realized something. Oh, she makes those faces at the two-way mirror when there aren't many customers, meaning it's a quiet time at the restaurant. Next time, I thought I'd try to time my visit for one of these quiet moments. Maybe then, I'd get a chance to chat with her for a bit. Before all this, I mostly just frequented the local convenience store. However, on my days off, I started doing bulk shopping at supermarkets and cut down on my impulse spending at convenience stores to save money. There's this restaurant that's a bit pricey, but she works there, and I wanted to visit. And then, the day before my next payday, I had decided to have dinner at that restaurant. Learning from my past experience, I decided to go the day before payday, not on the payday. Just to be sure, I checked the windows of the restaurant from the outside, which had turned into a one-way mirror. And I could see her making a funny face. When I entered the restaurant, just as I thought, I was the first customer of the night. Noticing a customer, she swiftly turned her body from the window to face inside. She guided me to a table for 4. I'm alone, is that okay? Yes, I don't think it will be that crowded tonight. I glanced over the menu, but I had already decided on the hamburger dinner set from the get-go. Returning the menu, I looked up at her, and she stared back at me intently. Excuse me, haven't we met somewhere before? Not at this restaurant. Yes, once at the auto repair shop you visited for a radio interview. Oh, you're that guy, she said, furrowing her brows, trying to recall. Was it Bob? Yes, Bob, right. Yes, it's Bob, not Roderick. She made a playful, gully face and stuck out her tongue. Realizing she had forgotten to take the order, she quickly headed towards the kitchen. New order, burger set, 1. After that, she whispered something to a dignified, older gentleman standing on the floor. The gentleman nodded in agreement, took a quick glance at me, and gave her another nod of approval. After she bowed to him, she returned to my table. I asked for permission to chat with you until your food is ready. Who's he? He's the owner. She then asked apologetically if she had mistakenly called me Roderick during the interview. I replied yes and jokingly mentioned that she called Mr. Smith Mr. Smurf. Hearing that, she laughed and shared how she got scolded in the studio for getting names wrong. Usually, I'm fine. I can say Bob correctly and even Manager Smith properly. But when I hold a microphone, I just mess up. She lamented, it's bad for a radio announcer. But I like listening to you, I said. She looked surprised, and I quickly tried to clarify. I mean, you have a unique style which makes the radio fun to listen to. Just then, a voice from the kitchen announced my hamburger was ready. She excused herself to get my meal. I sneakily glanced at the restaurant window. The one-way mirror was showing a clear reflection of me. When she brought the food, she said, "Sorry for the unnecessary chit-chat," and was about to leave my table when I stopped her. Just one more thing. She stopped and looked at me. Catherine, do you often make funny faces at that window? She looked genuinely shocked and covered her face with her hands. Could you see me? Yes, when it gets dark outside, that window becomes like a one-way mirror. From inside, it's like a regular mirror, but from outside, you can see everything inside the restaurant. She let out a big sigh, looking a little embarrassed. Then, as a demonstration, she made a funny face at me. I chuckled, saying, "Oh yeah, exactly that. Exactly." It's like a pronunciation exercise. I wanted to improve my speech clarity. I do it in front of the window, looking at my reflection, whenever I have free time. She bowed her head towards me, saying she won't do it anymore. She added, "Please have it while it's still warm," as she began to move away from my table. Without thinking, I called out to her. "It's perfectly fine. Having unique speech. It's like your own charm. I'm a fan, really, especially of your." She turned around, giving me a long, searching look. That night, I got carried away and talked endlessly with her, but afterwards, I felt embarrassed and decided not to visit that restaurant again. About a year after I arrived in Nebraska, shortly before I was set to return to New York, I decided to see her one last time at that restaurant. The place was almost empty that night. The gentlemanly owner seated me. Immediately after sitting, I looked around the restaurant, but she was nowhere to be seen. "It's been a while since your last visit. Thank you for coming back." I was surprised that he remembered me. For a moment, I wondered if he was mistaking me for someone else. "I felt terrible thinking our waitress might have bothered you with her long stories," he added. I quickly waved my hands in front of my face, denying it. Worried that he might have fired her because of a misunderstanding, I asked, "Is the waitress from that time off today?" He shook his head and said, "You know she works as a radio reporter, right?" I said yes, and mentioning that I still listened to her segment every Wednesday. Then, the owner told me about her. She couldn't make ends meet with just her weekly radio job, so she had been working part-time at this restaurant. However, about 3 months ago, she was scouted by a radio station in New York who found her intriguing. Now, she has quit her part-time job at this restaurant and moved to New York. In a radio station in New York, she appears in a late-night show as a comedian's assistant. She still appears in the program Good Morning Nebraska out of respect, as it was the show that nurtured her. I told her I'd be transferring to New York soon myself. So, this would be my last dinner at this place. Well, sorry for the long chat. Would you like the hamburger dinner set? The owner remembered my favorite dish. Even in Nebraska, you could listen to radio shows in New York. I quickly tuned into the late-night show where she was an assistant. "Catherine, you really need to work on your pronunciation." She was playfully teased on the show as well. "It's fine, really. There are a fan who likes me just the way I am." Who in the world would that be? A man named Roderick. He's not silly. He's a wonderful person. Oh, what's this? A love confession on air. Half a month later, I returned to New York. Not much had changed at my workplace, the repair factory, from a year ago. The only difference was that the young heir of the transportation company, who was the reason I was sent to Nebraska, had been reprimanded by his father and had calmed down. On the night before my first day off after returning to the New York factory, I spent some cash to buy a big bouquet and waited for her outside the radio station in Central Park after her late-night show. "Isn't that Bob? Why are you here?" She saw me and ran towards me, and I embraced her tightly. It was one of the few romances I had ever experienced. A story from a long time ago, over 30 years ago. In life, you never know what's going to happen. Sure, some things might seem unfair, but not all of them are bad. I once thought I'd never see a woman again after our first meeting, but then we ran into each other in the most unexpected place. Was it a miracle or fate? Never in a million years did I think our futures would turn out this way. My name is Jake, 30 years old. I work in the product planning department at the headquarters of a food company. I thought it'd be fun if something I came up with could benefit someone or make them excited. That's why I wanted to get into planning, and I found this job. They were hiring fresh out of college, looking for some young blood. Most of my work involves analyzing and collecting data, mostly under the guidance of my seniors. But I always hoped that one day it'd be my turn. Try drafting a proposal. I still remember the thrill when I was given that chance and the joy I felt when even a small project was approved. At 28, I took a big risk and made a proposal for a new project. It got approved and was a huge success. I even won the President's Award. Getting here wasn't easy, but I felt things had been going smoothly. Before I knew it, I hit 30. My parents were getting worried, always asking, "All you do is work. What about settling down?" Both of my parents got married when they were 22. My brother tied the knot at 24. So, they were probably concerned seeing me still single at 30. I know someone who's looking for a match. My mom suggested an arranged date. The idea didn't excite me, but my mom said, "It's not as formal as you think. Why not give it a shot?" Apparently, she had already shown that person my picture. I was annoyed she did that without asking, but she said the response was positive. The woman's name is Catherine. She's 28 and works as a nurse. "I'll send you her picture, take a look." My mom, sounding quite excited, hung up the phone without waiting for my response. Soon after, a picture and a message were sent to my cell phone. She's the one in the middle. It looked like a fun pic with her colleagues. She had her hair neatly tied up, and her smile was radiant. My phone buzzed again, a message from my mom. "Jake, she's totally your type, right?" My brother had seen the photo too and thought Catherine was right up my alley. That's my brother. He hit the nail on the head, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud reading my mom's message. To be honest, I've been so consumed with work since starting my job that I haven't been dating. Now, I'm not even sure how to go about finding someone. I do think about getting married someday. I felt like maybe it wouldn't hurt to just meet up once. It seems the lady in question, Catherine, isn't keen on a formal arranged date either. The idea was for the two of us to meet up and maybe grab dinner. We decided to have a date, but just the two of us without any matchmakers. We exchanged contact information and set a date. It turned out both of us were free the following Saturday. I was looking forward to the day we'd meet. However, on the day before the date, an unexpected situation arose. "You've got a transfer order." Called into the manager's office, I took the order and my eyes widened. "Is this?" I was at a loss for words. The sudden transfer was shocking enough, but to top it off, the new location was in what could be described as a rural branch office in another state. I have heard that the department has a small number of employees and is just a task-oriented department. Within the company, it had a certain reputation as where the sidelined employees ended up. Seeing my shock, the manager said, "It's perfect for you. You can speak your mind and work as you like." Apparently, he had recommended me for this transfer. While HR and the higher-ups were skeptical, the manager was convinced that I'd bring fresh energy and boost business, or so he claimed. Whether it was true or not, I heard the CEO had high hopes for my transfer too. "You're lucky," the manager said with a smirk. Why did this happen? That's when it hit me after hearing the words, "You can speak your mind and work however you want." Ever since I won an award within the company, the manager's attitude towards me changed drastically. "Hey, Jake, where's that report I asked for?" Looking back, that was the beginning. "Which one are you referring to?" "You know, the one I asked for a week ago," he retorted, his brows furrowing with frustration. But I had no recollection of him asking, and it was rare for him to make direct requests. Without any specifics, he publicly reprimanded me. "Don't get ahead of yourself, all right? I don't know why the director lied about asking me to do it, but he just lectured me and left." There were no urgent follow-up instructions either. I figured he must have been mistaken. However, from then on, he became more confrontational, often making snide remarks. That's when it hit me. A while back, there was a project that the manager pushed through based on his whims. Most of its content was his brainchild. However, it resembled a proposal that had been rejected in the past. Other companies had tried something similar and failed, and it wasn't in line with current market needs. While many disagreed, no one dared to oppose the manager. I, however, offered him some advice. It seems he didn't take kindly to it. That's probably why he targeted me. I regretted speaking up, but continued to work diligently while trying to avoid upsetting him. Seems it didn't work. and as a result, I got what felt like a demotion. "You're moving in 2 weeks. Make sure you hand everything over properly." With that, the manager walked away with a spring in his step. Now, with this transfer looming, the arranged date was the last thing on my mind. The new location was out of state and seemed like a dead end for my career. I thought I should call off the date before things got serious. However, I had already made a reservation at the restaurant. Canceling last minute didn't feel right, and telling Catherine over the phone seemed too rude. I decided to meet her in person and apologize. The next day, I met Catherine in front of the restaurant. Seeing her warm smile made my heart heavy. We entered the private room I had reserved for the occasion. Immediately after sitting down, I said, "Hey." I informed Catherine that I received a transfer order yesterday, that the new destination is far away, out of state, and I was assigned to a lesser-known department. It's a role with no potential for growth, and I had no idea what the future would hold. I couldn't possibly ask her to be okay with this. I also apologized for the inconvenience of meeting under these circumstances today. You could have just called, but you took the trouble to tell me in person. I appreciate it, but since we're here, how about having lunch together? I was prepared for her to be upset, but instead, Catherine gave me a warm smile. We enjoyed a delicious meal, and she shared stories about her work, how she had been too busy to meet anyone, and how a mutual acquaintance had introduced her to me. Turns out, our passion for our jobs was something we both had in common. The conversation flowed naturally, and time flew by. It was bittersweet when it came time to leave the restaurant. As I was leaving, I thanked her for the wonderful time and apologized once again for declining the previous arrangement. I then called my mom to update her. When I told her about my decision based on the transfer, she sounded disappointed but understood. I had some issues with the transfer, including issues with my boss. I considered quitting, thinking it might be better than transferring to the remote branch. But I decided to give it a shot, and if things didn't pan out, I could always leave. I decided to do my best at the new location. And then a year went by. The rural branch, rumored to be monotonous. Indeed, it was less exciting than when I was in the product planning department at the main office. Due to cost cutting, there were fewer staff, and we had to do tasks that would typically be handled by other teams at the main office. The workload was intense, and it felt like all of us were working like mules. Working overtime nonstop, I've been guzzling energy drinks just to keep going. It's been really tough on my body. And then, on a scorching summer day, as I was heading to the bus terminal, I suddenly felt unwell. I tried to sit on a bench but felt dizzy. I collapsed. I was suffering from mild heat stroke at this time. An elderly man nearby shouted, "Are you okay?" But all I could do was nod weakly. Then, I heard a familiar female voice ask, "Are you all right?" Unable to open my eyes, I just groaned. "Can you stand up? Sorry, let's get you to that bench over there." I felt hands supporting me, taking me to a shaded area. I don't know how many people helped me. They bought me water, fanned me, and took care of me. The woman who had spoken to me checked my pulse and felt my forehead to check my temperature. After some hydration and cooling down, I began to feel better. Once I felt a bit clearer, I thanked everyone, and they left. The helpful woman stayed till the end. "I'm glad you're looking better. Please go home and rest." I thanked her once more. "Thank you so much for your help." I looked up and met her eyes, and exclaimed, "Wait." She smiled. "I thought so. It's you, Jake, right?" It was Catherine. She had not recognized me initially, but noticed the resemblance once I began to recover. I hadn't been able to see her face clearly, and only realized now. "But why are you here, Catherine?" She mentioned she was on a solo trip, taking a break. It's surprising you recognize me from just one meeting. We laughed about it. Seeing that I was feeling better, Catherine looked relieved. I wanted to thank her properly, but decided to rest for the day. She mentioned she'd be in a nearby hotel the next day. We agreed to meet up the next Saturday. And the next day, I called my office right after and took a proper day off, and my body recovered. I let Catherine know that I was feeling better. While eating at a recommended upscale restaurant, I asked Catherine why she was traveling alone. Catherine wanted to be healed by nature while taking in the sights of various regions. But I could sense a hint of sadness in her expression. I'd get pretty worn out, so I took some time off on a whim. Catherine said that, though her smile looked forced. How about you, Jake? She shifted the topic to me, and I shared my recent happenings. I talked about my less satisfying job compared to before, and vented a bit. I realized how much I love the projects I used to work on. I'm not quite content with my current environment. When I first transferred here, I was determined to return to the main office and make a mark, but lately, I've been thinking that maybe trying something different might not be a bad idea. Hearing that, Catherine mused, maybe I should come over here. The air is fresh, and it's comforting. She looked distant. Her expression was still somewhat downcast. What happened? I asked out of concern. It turned out that her solo journey wasn't just for vacation. Catherine is a nurse at a major hospital. She works in a hospital ward and has a large number of patients that one person handles. While she's proud of her nursing career, she feels she's been too emotionally involved with each patient, which has drained her spirit. She started to wonder if nursing might not be the right career for her. She thought she had overcome such feelings a long time ago, but now they're resurfacing. She's contemplating quitting her nursing job. Not all of them are discharged from the hospital in good health. It might be even tougher than I imagine. Though it's not my place to say, I offered, maybe you need a break. Taking some time off can be necessary. It felt like I was talking more to myself than to Catherine. Maybe I should quit too, I exclaimed with a stretch and a grin. For some reason, I blurted out something completely unexpected. If you're up for it, why don't we travel together? What was I thinking? But it wasn't a lie. What was it? I had this vague feeling that things might be better if Catherine and I were together. Catherine looked surprised but then bashfully nodded, if you're okay with me. Daddy, oh, Michael, what's up today? I crouched down to lift my energetically running son. The clinic was only half day today, so I picked up Michael from daycare. Today is the community event day at the coastal town center. There are stalls selling fresh seafood, grilled fresh fish, and booths with toys and food that children love. I'm here today as an employee of the company organizing this event. Since my reunion with Catherine, I'd casually mentioned traveling together. It became a reality. We both thought it was just a spur of the moment. I quit my job, and Catherine quit nursing. Since both of us had been working so much, we hadn't spent much. We had plenty saved up for our journey. We traveled around the US on a whim. While I knew I wanted to start something new and loved planning, I wasn't clear about what else I was interested in, or whether I wanted to work in the food industry again. Catherine thought that taking a break might give her a new perspective. The reason she agreed to my wild idea was she hoped the trip would offer some clarity. One of the places we visited is the coastal town we now call home. The scent of the sea was ever present, and every meal we had was delicious. Moreover, throughout our stay, the warmth of the townsfolk was truly comforting. Catherine felt the same way. After our journey, we both considered settling down here. To settle down, we needed to find a job. I wanted to work in planning, so I checked a job listing website and saw that the event company I was working for was hiring. Based on my past work, whether it was in food or miscellaneous goods, I had been thinking narrowly, but I immediately thought, this is it, for someone else. To bring excitement. My core reasons for wanting to work in planning hadn't changed. The event company's website made my heart race even more. That's how I ended up joining the event company. And Catherine, she found work at a clinic. Catherine, who took the time to reflect on herself during our travels. She remembered when she aspired to be a nurse. If she could support someone, even just a little. She realized her pride in nursing and her feelings hadn't changed. During our travels, there were several instances where Catherine assisted sick people. Perhaps it's a nurse's intuition. Not that they were collapsed or huddled, but by observing their movements and complexion, Catherine would approach and ask, "Are you okay?" With swift actions, she'd calm them down, or make them feel a bit better, just like she did for me. I often think nursing is her true calling. I believe Catherine realized that too. Without hesitation, Catherine searched for a nursing job. And she found her current clinic. The clinic is closely connected to the local community. She said she hoped to support the folks in our beloved town. Our trip with Catherine, though spontaneous, never felt out of place. Being with her felt natural, or rather, there was an overwhelming sense of excitement. Our bond quickly grew closer. After living in this town for a while, with the thought, if it's with Catherine in mind, I made a heartfelt confession, almost like a proposal, asking, "Would you stay with me from now on?" To my joy, Catherine felt the same way. We dated for about a year, and then we got married. And then our son, Michael, was born. By the way, my family wasn't surprised when Catherine and I got married. They had anticipated this from the time we started our trip. Especially my mom and older brother, they still claim they played Cupid. Catherine's family is also supportive, happy to see her smiling, even though we're living far away. Had I not met Catherine, I might not have taken such a bold step. Looking back, that unexpected job transfer might have been a turning point leading to this happy future. Far from being a demotion, I think of it as a promotion. But the courage I had at that time is still a mystery to me. What was that about? It was strange, right? Catherine and I often reminisce and laugh about it. Maybe it was a mix of a miracle and destiny. While cherishing these happy moments, I hope we can keep smiling in this town we love so much.